Range anxiety is nothing new.
Traded the van for it, straight up. I can get 70 miles to the gallon on this hog.
We're just uniquely situated now to have range anxiety spread across a whole bunch of different platforms. And so we've kind of been dealing with this stuff likely since they've been driving cattle across the Midwest and wondering how far you could get and how quick, and trying to do their calculations to riding horses across Europe and across all the continents probably of the world. So I think in some way, shape, and form we've always wondered and tried to plan for how much we can get from the resources we have, right? I think it stems from that. And so, but in my case, range anxiety is twofold. And it's twofold, and these two things are connected to each other. And so we have kind of this unique situation, this expanding ability of being anxious about an electric vehicle. I think this is kind of a new frontier for us. I mean, when I was growing up, it was how long would the batteries last in my Walkman? That was sort of the range anxiety. Remember I got a Game Boy. I was like, ooh, how long can I play this straight up with the batteries, before they run out? 4 AA batteries, I remember. So we've been dealing with range anxiety and all of its permutations, and specifically as you start to kind of relate it to batteries, and as batteries have scaled up, and as the relationship of our power usage to batteries has become more intertwined and connected, and as we've had more access to these things, it's definitely changed the landscape. And so, for instance, we had to bring our car for service the other day. I know a lot of people don't know. Nobody might know, but our Hyundai, also doubles as our backup power storage. So we're really fortunate in that the Ioniq 5 has a vehicle to load capacity, and we can pull power from that, and we can power our house, which is super awesome. Let me see if I have a little. Oh yeah, so here it is. You can see the light, just kind of the light very faintly on in the front of the Ioniq. It's blinking, and it's powering our house right now. That was last night, and so when that works, this is a good redundancy, and this is really the first one of the probably many times I'm going to talk about this, because I'm so fascinated with how these things all play together and what this means in terms of the future of power usage and harnessing and domesticizing and kind of creating a power infrastructure that works more for individual people and families. And so the ability to have sort of a rolling power plant. I should get a little sticker on the car that says this. It's my generator on wheels. And the problem was yesterday, 2 days ago, when we needed to get some service in the car. Actually, one of the sensors in the car I think was off, and warning light came on, and so we made the appointment to take it in. And they had it in for a while, and it's been raining here for a couple days. We needed the rain here in the Northeast. It's been super dry. But long story short, here here, we can put the fireplace on. Long story short, when I was getting the car back, our house power was really dwindling. Here, let me switch this up here. Let's put on, this was our house power. 6%, as you could see. So we're at 6% house power. We were pulling in nothing on solar. We were using 0.7. I can rewind that for a sec here. Let's see here. So you could see in the upper third of this graphic here, the off-grid farm. Underneath that, we have 6% remaining. Now, what's notable about this is at 5%, the Tesla Powerwall system and gateway and inverters will all shut down. Now, it wouldn't matter if the inverters were not pulling in any sun. It was, 8 o'clock at night. But this kind of shows you at 5%. So we had, to my estimation, it says grid outage, less than 1 hour, backup hour remaining. My estimation, we had about a half an hour or so, which actually gives you power to do some things. I mean, this is the thing. Like a year ago, 2 years ago, we would have been in panic mode. I would have been in absolute panic mode seeing this 6%, and just worrying about how do we manage this? What do we do? And now 2 years later, even a year later, we have so many more options. So it's just important to kind of take a deep breath when this sort of thing happens, and be prepared and know, especially if you're planning this sort of thing, if you're planning a renovation, new construction, if you're planning to integrate either the ability to go off grid or the ability to maintain your household when your power goes out, then these are the sorts of things that you kind of want to start to think about. And I have a good I should put a spreadsheet out there. I have a spreadsheet that kind of it's general, it's very generalized, but it talks about from lighting fixtures to television fixtures to heating equipment, what types of draws different mechanical systems and different utilities have, and how you're able to manage that when you're starting to have long-term duration for power outages. So in our case, this was interesting. So the house is down to 6%. Our car was actually down at 25%, and I had to drive home, which meant that the percentage on the car battery was going to drop below 20%. So when the car battery drops below 20%, you can't do vehicle to load. So we can't use the Hyundai for our backup battery if that battery is below 20%. So the dealership took a long time with the car, looking at it, getting the diagnostics. I get it; it's a fancy piece of technology. And so by the time we got it back, and our house, I had to show them. I had to go into the dealership and I had to say, "Look, I'm not trying to be anecdotal or dramatic here. I'm just saying we have at the time, I think we had 13% or 14% power. So we have 14% power, and it's an accurate representation on the Tesla app that it gives you on the time frame. It doesn't give you to the minute, obviously, because they don't want to take that kind of liability or responsibility. But when it says you have 4.7 hours remaining, or when it says you have under an hour, you could be rest assured that that's accurate. And it depends on what you're drawing. And so here we're drawing 0.7. We might have been running some water or something like that. Typically, traditionally, if we really want to get into conservation mode and still run our household as we see fit, we can get it down to about 0.3, 0.4. And I could break that down, but that's really about 0.2 kilowatts or 200 watts running the refrigerator, and maybe 0.1 kilowatts or 100 watts running the blower fan on the fireplace, which is, which really does give us that nice warmth. This heats our house. This fireplace heats our 2,400 square foot house really, really, really well. I think at the time that this was taken, it was 74 degrees. And we were looking at about a high 30 degrees outside at night at this point in time in New England. And so really, really lucky to have that. So we're talking about 0.2 on the refrigerator, 0.1 on the fireplace. Throw in some internet and throw in some lighting is another maybe 0.1 or 0.2. So let's say as a baseline, 0.4 to 0.5 kilowatts is what we would end up using. Just kind of as a I don't want to say it's just like a basic setup for the house, because we're still running what we need to run. But there's certain things that we won't do. Not that a shower will take a lot of power, but when we're down to 6%, a shower might take 0.5% or something like that. And so is that where we want to start to push that boundary from? And so here you can see the rest of it where we, kind of how our system broke out in the day in terms of power, how we made power, and so we have the ability to do two things. The car is our backup system. Really, we use that at night, most nights, starting in December, in the winter time, December, January, February. The car just comes. It's even on nicer days, it's just nice to take the load off the house. So that way, if there's anything unpredictable, a weather system that sticks around, our friends from Canada often push down some amazingly cold, windy coastal weather. And so we just want to be prepared for any precipitation that comes through, just some, gray skies, those sorts of things. And so we'll switch over to the car. We'll save the power. We use about one power wall at night. This is, I had done this quick video. Let me see how this, then we might use, another close to Powerwall's worth for the day. And then we might use that at night too. So let's say in a worst case scenario, if we're not making any adjustments to our power usage, energy consumption at all,
3 power walls is going to last us through a gray day and into that next day, but it better be sunny because we're going to need to recharge.
True story.
And if it's not, we're going to wish that we had made some changes to our power usage at the previous time. So that leads us to, what do we do about it? And we have a main panel. There's a panel actually in the solar shed itself.
And so this is it. What you got to start to do is understand how much power each appliance makes. Understand how much power the activities that you do use. And it's like, that's a simple breakdown. You could create a chart for yourself. Again, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do a basic chart or a basic, just to start to relate to that. So, and that informed decisions on why we designed our house the way we did. And 5 years ago, it was an entirely different landscape. There was no Generac, General Motors. There was no EcoFlow. There was no Bluetti. There was none of these battery systems, battery manufacturers. I mean, they were out there, but we're talking about like a Jackery box that was doing, 500 watts, maybe a kilowatt, maybe 1,000 watts. But now it's these backup home battery systems that have become vital and essential to how we start to plan our housing, our lives, and our energy consumption moving forward.
And that kind of controls the gateway, the inverters, things that are pertinent and related to what we're running out of there. We also have a shutoff for the solar, for the electrical fence, for the animals and things like that. And that's all
everything in the
operated out of
shed
there. But there is a trench underground. It's just to the side of the tractor. We dug like a 4 or 5 foot trench underground, and that's where we ran power. We buried everything, and that.
I had to pump that trench out so many times. I can't even tell you. I had to pump that trench out so many times.
Comes into the corner of the house, and at the front of our house, just inside this foyer, I'm going to pull back for a minute. You could see we have our main electrical panel.
Yeah.
So here's, I'm pulling back. These are our front doors. Here's our.
So I call this the brains of the house here, and it was nice. It's nice and accessible. I like that it's right at the front.
Lemon tree. Oh, got to take a minute to smell the lemons. Take a look at our awesome lemon growing. Really does make great lemons, and brought it inside. Leah does all the amazing keeping of the tending to the plants, and I love having plants growing. I love the life. I love the growth.
None of that.
I love fruits. The fact that we have a lemon tree right now that's using this LED light that uses an unregisterable amount of power for right now. It's when we get into crunch time, that might be a different story, but it really isn't even registering for us right now.
If there was like 20 of those things on, we'd probably start to. I should do that. I should take the kilowatt and just kind of see how many lights do we have to plug in before it actually registers as a watt.
And it's on the same circuit that the fireplace fan is running. So we're going to leave that on. I'm going to show you what we're going to shut off.
So that's our
We
panel.
have the full complement right now.
Here's our full panel.
This is sort of our breaker panel. And I've already preempted.
Now, in this entire panel, I think it's worth noting too, it's duplicated, not in terms of all the switches, but the electrical setup is duplicated in the solar shed. So when we switch over from our manual transfer switch, one side of the solar shed box, electrical box, powers this entire electrical box. And that's how we set it up, because manual transfer switches, you have to choose between, from my understanding of it, powering the left side of the breaker box or powering the right side. So when we were able to bundle this whole thing up, send it out to our shed and assign it one side of the shed panel, when we switch our manual transfer switch over, we essentially switch over to this entire panel.
Shut some things off. I'm really going to show you what we leave on. So here you can kind of get the full arrangement of it.
And this is in not panic mode. This is in really conserve mode.
Kind of left on here and what we've decided to shut off. So we leave obviously the 200 amp main stays on, and we leave the well pump on. But we really want to make sure that we've got water to use, flush the toilets, take showers, run the sinks, all that good stuff. But other things like the AC, we're not using right now.
Yeah.
Because the fireplace is keeping us so toasty. So we're at a comfortable 74 degrees, and we're going to be able to maintain that. So this draws a little bit of a power to the wall-mounted box that is the indicator that kind of gives you the controls of the modes and the fan speed and that sort of thing. And we're just simply not using it. So we're going to shut it off. I am going to leave the bedrooms on because our girls are possibly charging devices right now, or they're going to be home in a little bit, and I don't want to tamper with anything because we're not in critical mode yet. So they can kind of decide or unplug.
And I think this, we don't get to critical mode now as much just because we do have the backup, the luxury of having the car, and we were able to fine tune our Kohler generator to at least charge one of the power walls when we could shut the whole system down, switch over to the car, fire up the Kohler generator if we need to get a little bit of juice in one. Now we're getting two of our power walls. That's another video.
When they get back. And so we'll leave the bedrooms on, but we will shut off the common bathrooms. The master floor bathroom heat we shut off. That draws a lot of power, and we don't often put that on.
Nope, we don't often put that on, and I am putting it on much less now because the other day I was like, hey, darling, oh, let's put the floor on. It's going to feel so good. And I put the floor on. I forgot to shut it off, and we were out. We were both busy working, doing stuff all day. And we looked at the power, like, how are we drawing so much power? And we're going into a great day, and it's because I'm an idiot and I forgot to shut the floor off. And it has a timer. It has fancy stuff. I don't. So it's just, that was my bad. So now I'm like afraid to put the master bath floor heat on.
Found when I designed the house for that and
But
put
it's
that
awesome.
in, I thought that would be some nice supplemental heat in the front corner of the house, particularly if the fireplace heat isn't
awesome.
reaching there. But we don't tend to use it that much because it is a big draw, and I've come to learn easy to forget to turn off. And so we've got some other things here. The washer and the dryer both have ghost loads. Really great to turn those off because you'll definitely save some power there.
Part of why shutting all these things down, even the ACs, the HVACs, even though essentially it's just sending power to the unit head to tell us what the temperature is and what the conditions are in the house, they just all stack up. Washer, dryer, HVACs, all these ghost loads, TVs, they'll just all stack up.
Fridge stays on. So right now what we've left on is we left the well on and we've left the fridge on.
Yeah.
And we've also left these living room, mudroom lights and plugs on because that powers our fireplace fan and then some other things that we have plugged in, some of the
internet,
LED lighting, the grow lighting for the lemon tree and some of the other the vegetation and greenery we have in here. And so on that side, I mean, we've shut our master bedroom off, the dehumidifier off, everything's kind of off because we're either not using it or it's not important right now. Now here, we have a heat strip in the basement and we don't really need that. It's warm enough in the house, it's warm enough outside. I tested it down there. I feel good that we're not going to freeze.
Heat strips can take a lot of power. And we do, it doesn't tend to freeze in our basement, which is good. But we do have it there as a backup with a sensor on it, for an antifreeze sensor.
Any pipes. So I'm going to go ahead and shut that off too. Studio sub panel. So you saw Leah's studio, and that has its own panel in it.
So we're really powering our house and two businesses and one nonprofit out of our whole little complex here. Our glorified farmhouse and tents.
And so that we can kind of micro control that. But for right now, we're going to leave the heat on because she has some clients coming up and we want to make sure that they're super comfortable and that she has all the tools and resources she needs. So keep that on. The range can shut off. We don't need that pulling any loads. This is the upstairs air conditioning. The garage sub panel, another thing that'll stay on. We have a separate panel in the garage for that.
Yeah.
And that'll control things like the internet.
We moved the internet. That's in the front now. That's why I said we leave the same plug that the fireplace fan is on. We put the internet on because that just made it easy. But we do have a separate panel in the garage for some of the utilities like the hot water heater and the septic system.
In addition to the garage doors and plugs and things like that. So if we do have any DeWalt tools or anything like that, that's batteries that are plugged in, we can go ahead and we could shut those off from the garage sub panel. We don't even need to unplug them. Kitchen plugs, dishwasher, that pulls a load. Microwave pulls a load. The hood doesn't really pull any load, but we just kind of shut it down just in the scheme of everything. And that kind of, here's the Brady plug. So the Brady plug stays on. We have the ultimate luxury of having a heated toilet seat. And that is not a luxury
it's worth
that I'm willing
talking
to
about
part with easily. So I leave that on until I really determine that power
that is
is
a
going
luxury.
to be at a premium. Or
a heated toilet seat in the wintertime, none of the rest of the heat could be working. It could be so cold. Oh man, I feel like life is good if I have a heated toilet seat.
an issue, and then I will begrudgingly shut that down. But that Brady plug right now is one of in our control. 40, we're looking at about 40 hours without any sunshine, without anything, that we'll be able to kind of keep our system going strong.
So basically, we can get our system shut down, comfortably living at, let's say, 0.5 kilowatts, 500 watts an hour. So 0.5 kilowatts, 500 watts an hour, that's 5 kilowatts every 10 hours. It's about 10, let's call it 12 kilowatts a day. So it's 12 kilowatts a day, and that's sort of baseline, not having any other of our amenities on, but still being able to live comfortably. So if our battery, our Powerwall system, we have 3 of them. They're 13.5 kilowatts each. So that's 27, 40 and a half, call it 40 kilowatts. If we have 40 kilowatts and 12 a day, in theory, we're talking about 3 days of total autonomy, of just being able to be off grid without any sun, without having to rely on any backup power or anything like that. And so when we start to see the percentages down, the thing is, we often are using, because we're keeping the house warm, the studios warm, we're living a life that we want to live. I mean, a contemporary life. We're sort of taking this head on and then trying to make the micro adjustments as we see it a little bit ahead, checking the weather app, checking the sort of the future of what power we think we might draw based on how we're living. But I think what's great now is when we start to get down to 20%, which before it would start to create a lot of concern with us and our family and how we deal with it. Now we've got all these strategies on how to shut the panel down, how to have our car be our backup power, how to use a generator to recharge the power walls. And there's definitely a process and there's steps to it. And now more than ever, again, fast forward 5 years from when I was planning this, it could all be automated. So now it's just a factor of funding. We didn't necessarily have the funding or the availability to do either one of those things back then, but now it's become more affordable. The idea of democratizing power and taking that into our own hands as we design these buildings and these houses that really could switch as simply as we switch off from our power system into other power systems. That's how fluid all of these utilities can flow together. And so it was just interesting where we had 6% power on the house, and I was like, oh boy. And we had 20% power on the car, and I was like, oh boy. So I was like, all right, I called my wife. I said, I got to stop. I'm going to do a power charge. I'm going to find a 125 kilowatt charger. So if you think 125 kilowatts in an hour, if I only need a half an hour of that, I'm still getting 60 kilowatts out of that. I only need maybe a 20 minutes of that. So I get myself maybe 20 kilowatts out of that. So at least it juices up another, let's see, maybe 30%. So if we could push ourselves from 20 to 50, 20 to 45 in the span of 20 minutes on our route on the way home by checking our app. So I have a couple different EV charging apps that I refer to. ChargePoint tends to be the one that's most around here, but EV goes around here too. But there's a couple of just generic ones that will map out your trip or map out anything. So I check my phone and it's the Tesla power, it's the car power, it's the distance to the charging station. And it's just the knowledge that knowing that these technologies can be relied on, we're going to get comfortable, we're going to get used to them. When the Ford Model T was invented, they probably had all kinds of range anxiety there too. And so now it's just a matter of catching up to the thinking and the evolution of how all of these things work together to have an understanding that's going to create a sense of empowerment. And I think that's it. It's going to lead to a really great sense of empowerment. And so now it's just like, I need the car back for the car guy. Because I got to charge, I got to get home, I got to plug in, and we got to recharge our battery. But it was all possible. And so the range anxiety, we cut it a little close. The house anxiety, that's a new thing. I don't think a lot of people have to live with the fact that their house has a finite amount of power and might run out. But these are things that are fascinating to live with. They're possible to live with. And it actually is empowering in so many ways to know that we've got to relate to our environment, to our lifestyle, and to our community in a way that's going to really bring us all together. I think in a unique and have a unique opportunity to do that, to blend this kind of technology of this new resource and this, obviously blessing of this, transcendent resource of sunshine, this abundance resource of sunshine, and just being able to smile our way through it as we go. So that's it. That's sort of I think I caught up. I think I caught up with everything.
Into it. So we'd go from maybe what I would say is like this green light, we've got plenty of power, we're making plenty of power, tomorrow's great, to all right, more towards the yellow.
Yeah.
Let's take some caution here. Today's supposed to gray out, tomorrow might not be great. And if that's the case, this is sort of how our power walls break down. And I mentioned this before, is that we'll use.
So that's it. So, you just got to plan for the best, prepare for the worst. It's true on the off-grid farm as it is everywhere else in the world. So hope everybody's got enough power for their day inside and out. I'm going to continue this conversation. This is an important conversation. And we're going to keep learning together on the fly. If anybody has some advice, thoughts, comments, ideas, suggestions, we're about to get some EcoFlow batteries, I think, to test those out for a few applications in and around the farm. And we will keep you posted. Catch you on the flip, everybody.